I've always been a sucker for a challenge, and this hot air balloon photo shoot over Augusta's autumn landscape was shaping up to be my magnum opus. The crisp October air nipped at my cheeks as I fiddled with my camera equipment, double-checking every lens and filter. This wasn't just another gig. It was a chance to capture the raw beauty of Maine from a perspective few had ever seen. As I waited for my model to arrive, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of nervousness. I'd worked with countless beautiful women before, but something about this shoot felt different. Maybe it was the altitude, or maybe it was just the coffee I'd chugged to combat my wake-up call. Then she appeared, and suddenly, I forgot how to breathe. Andrea Harris sauntered towards me, her blonde hair catching the early morning light like spun gold. Her green eyes sparkled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation as she approached the basket. "Alexandra Collins?" she asked, extending her hand. "I'm Andrea. Ready for an adventure?" I shook her hand, hoping she couldn't feel the slight tremor in mine. "Call me Alex," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. "And adventure is my middle name." As we ascended into the sky, the world below us transformed into a patchwork quilt of reds, oranges, and golds. Andrea gasped, her face lighting up with childlike wonder. I raised my camera, capturing that moment of pure joy before she even realized I was shooting. "My gosh, it's breathtaking," she whispered, leaning slightly over the edge of the basket. I lowered my camera, drinking in the sight of her silhouetted against the dawn sky. "Yeah," I murmured. "Breathtaking." We drifted higher, the cool air growing thinner. I directed Andrea through a series of poses, marveling at how effortlessly she moved, how the camera seemed to love her from every angle. But as I checked my watch, a knot of concern formed in my stomach. We should have started our descent by now. Slight problem," our pilot called out, his brow furrowed as he fiddled with the controls. "Looks like we've got a malfunction with the burner. We're gonna be up here a bit longer than planned." Andrea's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing her face. I instinctively reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "Hey, it's okay. We've got plenty of fuel and supplies. Plus, you're stuck with a world-class photographer. Think of all the extra shots we can get." She laughed, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "Well, when you put it that way, how can I complain?" As the sun climbed higher in the sky, we talked. Really talked. Not just the superficial chit-chat of a model and photographer, but the kind of deep, soul-bearing conversation that only seems to happen when you're suspended between earth and sky. Andrea told me about her childhood in rural Maine, her struggles with self-acceptance, and her dreams of making it big in the fashion world. I shared stories of my own journey, the highs and lows of building a career in a cutthroat industry, and the loneliness that often came with it. Hours passed, but neither of us seemed to notice. It wasn't until the pilot announced he'd fixed the issue that I realized how close we'd been standing, how our hands had somehow found each other during our conversation. As we began our descent, Andrea turned to me, her green eyes searching mine. "You know, Alex, I think this might be the start of something special." I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the autumn sun. "I think you might be right." The weeks following our sky-high encounter flew by in a whirlwind of flashing cameras and stolen glances. Andrea and I fell into an easy rhythm, our professional relationship blossoming with each photo session. I found myself looking forward to our shoots with an eagerness that went beyond mere artistic passion. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped below Augusta's skyline, I was hunched over my computer, meticulously editing our latest set. The soft ping of my studio door made me look up, and there she was, Andrea, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, holding a bottle of wine and wearing a smile that could melt glaciers. "Thought you could use a break," she said, sauntering over to my workstation. "And maybe a second pair of eyes?" I felt a flutter in my chest as she leaned over my shoulder, her perfume enveloping me in a cloud of jasmine and something uniquely Andrea. "I never say no to wine," I quipped, trying to ignore the electricity crackling between us. Hours slipped by unnoticed as we pored over the photos, trading stories and sipping Merlot. Andrea's laughter filled the studio, a melody I never wanted to end. As the night deepened, our conversation turned more personal, fueled by the wine and the intimacy of the darkened room. "You know," Andrea murmured, her eyes fixed on a particularly stunning shot of herself, "I've never felt as beautiful as I do when I'm in front of your camera." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. "That's because you're beautiful," I replied softly, "inside and out." Our eyes met, and for a moment, the world stood still. Andrea's hand brushed against mine as she reached for the mouse, and I felt a jolt of electricity shoot up my arm. We both froze, the air suddenly thick with unspoken tension. Clearing my throat, I quickly switched to the next photo, trying to regain my professional composure. But the moment had shifted something between us, like a lens coming into focus. As our late-night editing sessions became more frequent, I found myself opening up to Andrea in ways I never had with anyone else. We shared our deepest fears, our wildest dreams, and the parts of ourselves we usually kept hidden from the world. One night, as we sprawled on the floor of my studio, surrounded by contact sheets and empty takeout containers, Andrea turned to me with a vulnerability I'd never seen before. "Alex," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "can I tell you something?" I nodded, my breath catching in my throat. I've never been with a woman before," she confessed, her cheeks flushing. "But lately, I've been feeling things I can't explain, especially when I'm with you." My heart hammered against my ribs as I processed her words. "Andrea," I breathed, reaching out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "You're not alone in those feelings." The air between us crackled with possibility. We leaned in closer, drawn together like magnets. Just as our lips were about to meet, my phone blared to life, shattering the moment. Cursing under my breath, I scrambled to silence it. When I looked back, Andrea had already stood up, smoothing out her clothes with shaky hands. "I should go," she said, not meeting my eyes. "It's late, and we have that beach shoot tomorrow." Before I could protest, she was gone, leaving me alone in the studio with a head full of questions and a heart full of longing. The next morning, as we drove to the coast for our sunrise shoot, an awkward silence hung between us. But, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, I saw a renewed determination in Andrea's eyes. "Alex," she said, as we set up the equipment on the deserted beach, "about last night." I held my breath, terrified of what might come next. "I don't regret it," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "Any of it. And I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." Relief washed over me like the waves lapping at the shore. "Neither do I admitted, a smile tugging at my lips. As the sun climbed higher, casting its warm light over Andrea's features, I knew that whatever happened next, our lives had been irrevocably changed, and I couldn't wait to see where this new path would lead us. The coastal breeze whipped through my hair as I adjusted my camera settings, trying to capture the perfect balance of light and shadow on Andrea's face. The sunrise shoot had been a success, but the real magic was happening in the quiet moments between clicks of the shutter. "You're a natural," I called out, watching as Andrea gracefully posed against the backdrop of crashing waves. She flashed me a smile that made my heart skip a beat, and I found myself lowering the camera just to drink in the sight of her. As the morning wore on, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. I glanced at the sky, then back at Andrea. "We might want to wrap this up soon," I suggested. "Looks like rain's coming." She nodded, but there was a mischievous glint in her eye. "One more set?" she pleaded. "I have an idea." Before I could respond, Andrea was running towards the water, her sundress billowing behind her. I laughed, chasing after her with my camera at the ready. Just as I reached the water's edge, the first drops of rain began to fall. "Andrea," I called out, half laughing, half concerned. "We're going to get soaked." She turned back to me, her blonde hair darkening with moisture, a wild joy radiating from her face. "So what?" she shouted back. "Live a little, Alex." The rain intensified, fat droplets pelting us as I continued to shoot. Andrea twirled in the surf, her laughter carried on the wind. I'd never seen anything so beautiful in my life. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed closely by a boom of thunder. Reality crashed back in, and I realized we were standing in the middle of a brewing storm. "Okay, time to go," I yelled, grabbing Andrea's hand and pulling her towards the beach. We ran across the sand, the rain now coming down in sheets. By the time we reached my car, we were both drenched to the bone and breathless with laughter. I fumbled with my keys, my wet hands slipping on the metal. "Damn it," I muttered, dropping them in the sand. As I bent to retrieve them, I felt Andrea's hand on my arm. I straightened up, finding myself mere inches from her face. Raindrops clung to her eyelashes, and her green eyes were dark with an emotion I couldn't quite name. "Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding rain. "I want to try something." Before I could respond, she closed the distance between us, pressing her lips to mine in a kiss that tasted of salt and rain and possibility. For a moment, I was too shocked to react. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, I melted into the kiss, my hands finding their way to her waist. The world fell away, narrowing to just this moment. The feel of Andrea's lips on mine, the rain soaking us to the skin, the thundering of my heart matching the storm around us. When we finally broke apart, both gasping for air, I couldn't help the giddy laugh that escaped me. "Wow," I breathed, resting my forehead against hers. Andrea grinned, her cheeks flushed. "Yeah, wow." We drove back to Augusta in comfortable silence, our wet clothes slowly drying in the warmth of the car. As I pulled up to Andrea's apartment, I turned to her, unsure of what to say. She saved me the trouble. "Want to come up?" she asked, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "We should probably talk." I nodded, following her inside. Once in her apartment, Andrea disappeared into her bedroom, returning moments later with towels and dry clothes. As I changed, I could hear her moving around in the kitchen, the clink of mugs and the whistle of a kettle providing a homey soundtrack. When I emerged, Andrea was curled up on the couch, 2 steaming mugs of tea on the coffee table in front of her. I sat down beside her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body but not quite touching. "So," I began, wrapping my hands around the mug. "That was amazing," Andrea finished for me, a soft smile playing on her lips. Then, as if a dam had broken, words began to pour out of her. "Alex, I've never felt this way about anyone before. And it scares me. I've always dated men, always thought that's what I was supposed to do. But being with you, it feels right in a way nothing ever has before." I reached out, taking her hand in mine. "Andrea, I'm scared too, but I think this could be something really special." She squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I want to try," she whispered. "I want to see where this goes, but I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with a woman." I leaned in, brushing a soft kiss against her cheek. "We'll figure it out together," I promised, one day at a time. As the rain continued to fall outside, Andrea and I talked for hours, sharing our fears, our hopes, and our dreams for the future. By the time the storm cleared, we had mapped out the beginnings of something beautiful, a love story written in raindrops and camera flashes, waiting to be developed. Spring blossomed in Augusta, bringing with it new beginnings and the sweet scent of possibility. As the city shook off its winter slumber, Andrea and I found ourselves navigating the delicate dance of a budding relationship. Every shared glance, every stolen kiss felt like a revelation, a secret language only we understood. The day of my gallery opening arrived, painting the town in a palette of excitement and nervous energy. I stood in front of the mirror, fussing with my hair and second-guessing my outfit choice for the 100th time. This wasn't just any exhibition. It was the first time Andrea and I would be appearing together in public as a couple. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my anxious reverie. I opened it to find Andrea standing there, a vision in emerald green that made my breath catch in my throat. "Wow," I managed, drinking in the sight of her. "You look incredible." She smiled, a hint of shyness in her eyes. "So do you," she said, leaning in to plant a quick kiss on my lips. "Ready to knock 'em dead?" The gallery was packed, a sea of Augusta's art scene elite mingling among my photographs. I made the rounds, shaking hands and fielding questions, all the while hyper-aware of Andrea's presence in the room. She moved with grace and confidence, charming everyone she spoke to. As I chatted with a potential buyer, I caught sight of Andrea across the room. Our eyes met, and the world seemed to slow down. She gave me a small, private smile that sent warmth blooming in my chest. In that moment, I knew I was falling hard and fast. The night wore on, a blur of champagne flutes and congratulations. Finally, as the last of the guests trickled out, I found myself alone with Andrea in the quiet gallery. "So," she said, sliding her arms around my waist, "how does it feel to be the toast of Augusta's art world?" I laughed, pulling her closer. "Pretty damn good. But you know what feels even better?" "What's that?" "This," I murmured, capturing her lips in a kiss that left us both breathless. As we broke apart, Andrea's eyes sparkled with mischief. You know, I've always fantasized about making out in an art gallery after hours. I raised an eyebrow, a grin tugging at my lips. Oh, really? Well, who am I to deny an artist her inspiration? What followed was a blur of wandering hands and stifled giggles as we ducked behind sculptures and pressed each other against walls adorned with my photographs. It felt illicit and thrilling, like we were the only two people in the world. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of stolen moments and shared experiences. We navigated the challenges of our relationship with honesty and humor, learning each other's quirks and insecurities. Andrea opened up about her fears of coming out to her family, and I held her as she cried, promising to be by her side every step of the way. As spring gave way to early summer, we received an invitation to a prestigious fashion event in Portland. It would be our first official outing as a couple in the industry, and the nerves were palpable. The night of the event, we arrived hand in hand, turning heads as we made our way down the red carpet. Flashbulbs popped around us, and I could feel Andrea's hand trembling slightly in mine. "You okay?" I whispered, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. She took a deep breath, then nodded. "I'm perfect," she said, her voice steady. "I'm with you." The evening was a blur of air kisses and small talk, but through it all, Andrea was a constant presence at my side. We fielded questions about our friendship with practiced ease, dancing around the truth without quite confirming or denying anything. As the night wore on, we slipped away from the crowd, finding a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The warm summer air was heavy with the scent of nearby flowers, and the distant sound of traffic provided a soothing backdrop. "Thank you," Andrea said softly, leaning into me. "For what?" "For being patient with me. For understanding why I'm not ready to shout it from the rooftops just yet." I turned to face her, cupping her cheek in my hand. "Andrea, I'd wait forever for you if I had to. What we have. It's worth protecting." She leaned in, kissing me with a passion that made my toes curl. When we parted, her eyes were shining with unshed tears. "I love you, Alex," she whispered. "I know it might be too soon to say it, but I do. I love you." My heart soared, and I couldn't keep the grin off my face. "I love you too," I replied, pulling her close. "So damn much." We stayed on that balcony for what felt like hours, trading kisses and whispered promises under the starlit sky. As we finally made our way back to the party, hand in hand, I felt invincible. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we could face them together. Little did I know, our resolve would be tested sooner than either of us could have imagined. The warm glow of contentment from the fashion event lingered for days, wrapping Andrea and me in a cocoon of blissful domesticity. We spent lazy mornings tangled in bedsheets, afternoons exploring hidden corners of Augusta, and evenings lost in conversation over home-cooked meals. It felt like we were living in our own private universe, where the outside world couldn't touch us. But reality has a way of shattering even the most perfect illusions. It was a balmy Friday evening when we decided to try out the new French bistro downtown. Andrea looked stunning in a flowing summer dress, her blonde hair catching the last rays of sunlight as we strolled hand in hand down the sidewalk. I couldn't resist stealing glances at her, marveling at how lucky I was. The restaurant was cozy and intimate, with soft lighting and the gentle strains of Edith Piaf playing in the background. We ordered a bottle of wine and fell into easy conversation, discussing everything from upcoming projects to our dream vacations. As Andrea leaned across the table to whisper something in my ear, her hand resting on mine, I noticed a group of men at the bar watching us. Their gazes made me uneasy, but I brushed it off, focusing instead on the beautiful woman in front of me. The evening progressed, and as we finished our dessert, I suggested a nightcap at a nearby lounge. Andrea agreed enthusiastically, her cheeks flushed from the wine and happiness. We left the restaurant, the warm night air enveloping us like a caress. I draped my arm around Andrea's waist, pulling her close as we walked. She turned to me, her green eyes sparkling, and I couldn't resist leaning in for a kiss. That's when I heard it, a harsh, guttural voice cutting through the night. "Look at that! Couple of dykes putting on a show." I froze, feeling Andrea tense beside me. Turning slowly, I saw the group of men from the bar approaching us, their faces twisted with disgust and something darker, a predatory gleam that sent chills down my spine. "Why don't you take that shit somewhere else?" one of them spat, taking a menacing step forward. I instinctively moved to put myself between Andrea and the men. "We're not looking for trouble," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're just heading home." "Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought of that before you started flaunting your perversion in public," another man sneered. Andrea's hand tightened on my arm. "Alex," she whispered, fear evident in her voice, "let's just go." I nodded, starting to turn away, when I felt a rough hand grab my shoulder. "Where do you think you're going, dyke?" What happened next was a blur of motion and adrenaline. I shoved the man's hand off me, but he retaliated with a wild swing. I ducked, but his fist caught Andrea's cheek, sending her stumbling backward. Rage boiled up inside me. I lashed out, my fist connecting with the man's jaw. Pain exploded in my hand, but I barely noticed it. All I could think about was protecting Andrea. The scene devolved into chaos. Fists flew, insults were hurled, and somewhere in the distance, I heard someone shouting for the police. I took a few hard hits, tasting blood in my mouth, but I gave as good as I got. Through it all, Andrea was right there beside me, her earlier fear replaced by fierce determination. She landed a particularly impressive kick to one attacker's groin, sending him howling to the ground. Just when it seemed like we might be overwhelmed, the wail of police sirens cut through the night. Our attackers scattered like cockroaches, leaving Andrea and me battered and breathless on the sidewalk. "Are you okay?" I gasped, reaching for her. My hand came away sticky with blood from a cut above her eye. She nodded, wincing. "I think so. You?" Before I could answer, a wave of dizziness washed over me. I stumbled, and Andrea caught me, her eyes wide with concern. The next thing I knew, we were in an ambulance. Then the bright fluorescent lights of the emergency room. Doctors and nurses swarmed around us, asking questions and tending to our injuries. Hours later, we found ourselves sharing a hospital room, both of us battered but alive. Andrea had a nasty cut above her eye that required stitches, and a spectacular bruise was blooming on her cheek. I had a couple of cracked ribs, a sprained wrist, and a concussion. As the adrenaline wore off and the pain medication kicked in, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. I looked over at Andrea, feeling a mixture of love, guilt, and fierce protectiveness. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't." Andrea cut me off, reaching out to take my hand. "Don't you dare apologize," she said fiercely. "We did nothing wrong. Those bastards are the ones who should be sorry." I squeezed her hand, fighting back tears. "I was so scared," I admitted. "When I saw him hit you, I lost it." She smiled, though it clearly caused her pain. "My hero," she murmured. We fell into silence, the gravity of the situation settling over us like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just a random act of violence, it was a hate crime. Our bubble of safety had been violently burst, forcing us to confront the harsh realities of being an openly gay couple in a world that wasn't always accepting. As dawn broke, painting the hospital room in soft hues of pink and gold, I made a silent vow. No matter what challenges we faced, no matter how many ignorant people tried to tear us down, I would stand by Andrea's side. Our love was worth fighting for, and I was ready for battle. The weeks following the attack were a blur of police reports, doctor's appointments, and sleepless nights. Andrea and I clung to each other like survivors of a shipwreck, finding solace in the warmth of each other's arms when the nightmares became too much to bear. As our physical wounds began to heal, we faced a new challenge, the emotional aftermath. The carefree happiness we'd enjoyed seemed tainted now, overshadowed by a constant undercurrent of fear and hypervigilance. Simple acts like holding hands in public or sharing a quick kiss goodbye became fraught with anxiety. But as the saying goes, it's always darkest before the dawn. And our dawn came in the form of an unexpected outpouring of support from Augusta's art community. It started with a bouquet of flowers from a local gallery owner, accompanied by a heartfelt note condemning the attack and offering assistance. Then came emails and phone calls from fellow artists, models, and even some of my past clients. Each message carried the same sentiment: we stand with you. The turning point came when Marion, the owner of the city's most prestigious gallery, showed up at our door one rainy afternoon. She swept into the apartment like a force of nature, all flowing scarves and jangling bracelets. "Darlings," she announced, pulling us both into a perfume-scented embrace. "We simply cannot let those Neanderthals win. We're putting together a benefit exhibition, and you two are going to be the stars." Andrea and I exchanged bewildered glances. "Marian," I began hesitantly, "that's incredibly kind, but—" She waved away my protests with a bejeweled hand. "No buts. This is happening, dear. The entire community is rallying behind you. It's time to show the world that love is love, and art is the perfect medium for that message." As Marian laid out her grand vision, I felt a spark of something I hadn't experienced since the attack: hope. I looked at Andrea and saw the same cautious optimism reflected in her eyes. Over the next few weeks, our apartment became a hub of activity. Artists dropped by with pieces to donate, activists offered advice on LGBTQ resources, and friends brought casseroles and words of encouragement. Through it all, Andrea was my rock, her strength and resilience never failing to amaze me. One evening, as we sorted through a stack of submissions for the exhibition, Andrea grew quiet. I looked up to find her staring at a photograph with tears in her eyes. "Andy, what's wrong?" I asked, moving to her side. She wordlessly handed me the photo. It was a stunning black and white image of two elderly women, their wrinkled hands clasped together, wedding rings glinting in the light. The caption read, "Years of love, in memory of the fights we won." "This is why we can't give up," Andrea said softly. "For them, for us, for everyone who's still afraid to be who they are." I pulled her into my arms, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "We won't give up," I promised. "Not ever." As the day of the exhibition approached, we faced another hurdle: Andrea's parents. She'd been putting off telling them about us, but with the media coverage of the attack and the upcoming benefit, she knew she couldn't delay any longer. I held her hand as she made the call, my heart breaking as I watched tears stream down her face while she explained everything to her mother. The conversation was tense, filled with long silences and choked sobs. When she finally hung up, Andrea collapsed into my arms. "They need time," she whispered. "Mom said. She said they love me, but they need to process this." I stroked her hair, wishing I could shield her from the pain. "They'll come around," I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. "They'd be fools not to see how amazing you are." The night of the exhibition arrived, bringing with it a nervous energy that thrummed through both of us. As we stood before the mirror, putting the finishing touches on our outfits, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. "You ready for this?" I asked, meeting Andrea's eyes in the reflection. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "Ready as I'll ever be. You." I laced my fingers through hers, bringing her hand to my lips for a gentle kiss. "With you by my side? I'm ready for anything." The gallery was packed, a sea of familiar and unfamiliar faces all gathered in support. As we made our entrance, a hush fell over the crowd, followed by a thunderous applause that brought tears to my eyes. Marian took the stage, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight not just to appreciate beautiful art, but to celebrate love in all its forms. Alexandra and Andrea have shown us that even in the face of hatred and ignorance, love perseveres. Their courage inspires us all." As we moved through the crowd, accepting hugs and well wishes, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Andrea frozen in place, her eyes fixed on a point across the room. Following her gaze, I saw an older couple hesitantly making their way towards us. "Mom? Dad?" Andrea's voice was barely a whisper. Her mother stepped forward, eyes brimming with tears. "Oh, sweetie," she said, pulling Andrea into a fierce hug. "We're so sorry. We love you so much." As I watched Andrea reunite with her parents, their love overcoming fear and misunderstanding, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. We still had battles ahead, but in that moment, surrounded by art and allies, I knew that love truly could conquer all. The success of the benefit exhibition marked a turning point in our lives. Andrea and I found ourselves thrust into the spotlight as unlikely ambassadors for love and acceptance in Augusta's art scene. It was a role we embraced with cautious optimism, determined to use our platform to make a difference. As summer faded into autumn, we threw ourselves into planning our next project, a joint exhibition celebrating love in all its forms. We wanted to create something that would challenge perceptions and open hearts, showcasing the beauty of diverse relationships through our combined artistic vision. Our apartment became a whirlwind of creativity. Every surface was covered in sketches, contact sheets, and scribbled notes. We'd stay up late into the night, bouncing ideas off each other, our excitement growing with each passing day. One evening, as we sat surrounded by the chaos of our creative process, Andrea turned to me with a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know," she said, tracing patterns on my arm, "we should really do a series of self-portraits for the show." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh? What did you have in mind?" She leaned in, her lips brushing my ear as she whispered her idea. I felt a blush creep up my neck, but couldn't deny the thrill that ran through me at the thought. The resulting photographs were intimate, raw, and achingly beautiful. They captured moments of vulnerability and strength, showcasing the depth of our connection in a way that was artistic rather than explicit. As we reviewed the images, I felt a surge of pride and love for the woman beside me. "These are perfect," I murmured, pulling Andrea close. "Thank you for trusting me with this." She smiled, pressing a soft kiss to my lips. "I trust you with everything, Alex, always." As word of our upcoming exhibition spread, so did the excitement in the community. We received messages of support from LGBTQ organizations across the state, offers from other artists to collaborate, and even inquiries from galleries in neighboring cities about hosting the show. But with the growing anticipation came an undercurrent of tension. Not everyone was thrilled about our project's message of inclusivity and love. We started receiving anonymous emails filled with hateful rhetoric, and one morning we awoke to find crude graffiti spray-painted on the sidewalk outside our building. Each incident left us shaken, but we refused to be intimidated. If anything, it only strengthened our resolve to make the exhibition a success. We increased security measures at the gallery and our home, and the local LGBTQ community rallied around us, offering protection and support. Despite the challenges, we pressed on. The days leading up to the opening night were a blur of last-minute preparations, media interviews, and nervous energy. Andrea and I barely slept, running on adrenaline and copious amounts of coffee. The night before the exhibition, we received a call that nearly derailed everything. The gallery had been vandalized, several pieces destroyed and hateful messages left on the walls. My heart sank as I listened to Marion's tearful voice on the phone, describing the damage. When I hung up, Andrea was watching me, her face pale. "How bad is it?" she asked softly. I ran a hand through my hair, fighting back tears of frustration. "Bad enough. They're not sure if we can open tomorrow night." Andrea's expression hardened, a fierce determination igniting in her eyes. "Like hell we can't," she said, grabbing her coat. "Come on, we're going down there." We arrived at the gallery to find a small crowd already gathered. Artists, friends, and community members had shown up en masse, armed with cleaning supplies and replacement artwork. The sight brought a lump to my throat. Through the night, we worked tirelessly to restore the gallery. Damaged pieces were replaced with new donations, walls were repainted, and security was doubled. As dawn broke, casting a warm glow through the windows, we stood back to survey our work. Against all odds, we were ready. Opening night arrived with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Andrea and I stood hand in hand at the gallery entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. The turnout was beyond our wildest expectations, with people lining up down the block to show their support. As I looked around the packed gallery, taking in the diverse crowd and the powerful artwork on display, I felt a sense of awe. We had created something beautiful out of adversity, a testament to the enduring power of love and art. Midway through the evening, Andrea squeezed my hand, nodding towards the door. I followed her gaze and felt my breath catch. There, looking slightly out of place but undeniably proud, were Andrea's parents. We made our way through the crowd to greet them. Andrea's mother pulled us both into a tight hug, whispering words of love and apology. Her father, more reserved but equally emotional, shook my hand firmly before embracing his daughter. "We're so proud of you both," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. This is incredible." As the night wore on, the exhibition was hailed as a resounding success. Critics praised its boldness and artistry, while visitors left moved and inspired. We had done it. We had taken a stand for love and acceptance, and Augusta had stood with us. In the quiet moments after the last guest had left, Andrea and I wandered through the gallery, hand in hand. We stopped before a large photograph, one of the self-portraits we had taken together. In it, we were tangled in an embrace, faces turned towards each other, lost in our own world. "We did it," Andrea murmured, leaning her head on my shoulder. I pressed a kiss to her temple, overwhelmed with love and gratitude. "We did," I agreed, "and this is just the beginning." As we stood there, surrounded by images of love in all its beautiful diversity, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our love story, captured in light and shadow, was a beacon of hope, and we were ready to shine that light for all the world to see. A year had passed since our groundbreaking exhibition, and life had settled into a new rhythm. Andrea and I had become something of a power couple in Augusta's art scene, our work continuing to push boundaries and challenge perceptions. But more importantly, we had grown stronger together, our love deepening with each passing day. As autumn painted the city in hues of red and gold, I found myself growing restless. There was something I'd been planning for months, a surprise that I hoped would take our relationship to the next level. With trembling hands, I booked a hot air balloon ride, a callback to the day we first met. The morning of our anniversary dawned clear and crisp. Andrea eyed me suspiciously as I ushered her into the car, refusing to divulge our destination. "Alex, what are you up to?" she asked, a mix of excitement and nervousness in her voice. I just grinned, pressing a quick kiss to her cheek. "You'll see." As we pulled up to the launch site, recognition dawned on Andrea's face. Her eyes widened, filling with tears as she turned to me. "Oh, Alex." I helped her out of the car, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. "Happy anniversary, my love." The balloon ride was everything I'd hoped for and more. As we soared over Augusta, the city sprawled out beneath us like a patchwork quilt. I marveled at how far we'd come. Andrea stood at the edge of the basket, her blonde hair whipping in the wind, a look of pure joy on her face. "It's just like the first time," she said, turning to me with a radiant smile. "Do you remember?" I nodded, moving to stand beside her. How could I forget? It was the day my life changed forever. As we drifted over a particularly beautiful stretch of autumn foliage, I knew it was time. My hands shook as I reached into my pocket, feeling for the small velvet box I'd been carrying for weeks. "Andrea," I began, my voice wavering slightly. "This past year has been the most incredible journey of my life. You've been my partner, my muse, my rock. You've shown me what true love really means." She turned to face me, her green eyes wide and shining. I dropped to one knee, nearly losing my balance in the swaying basket. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," I continued, opening the box to reveal a delicate diamond ring. "Andrea Harris, will you marry me?" For a moment, the world stood still. Then Andrea let out a joyous laugh, pulling me to my feet and into her arms. "Yes," she cried, peppering my face with kisses. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As I slipped the ring onto her finger, our lips met in a kiss that seemed to stretch into eternity. We were flying not just in the balloon but on the wings of our love. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of excitement and planning. We decided on a small, intimate ceremony in the botanical gardens, surrounded by the vibrant colors of early autumn. It was a far cry from the lavish affairs either of us had once imagined, but it felt perfect. On the day of the wedding, I stood waiting in a small clearing, my heart racing as I heard the first strains of music. And then I saw her, Andrea, walking towards me in a flowing white dress, her face radiant with happiness. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that this was the beginning of our greatest adventure yet. The ceremony was a blur of tears and laughter, punctuated by vows that left not a dry eye in the audience. As we exchanged rings, I felt a sense of completion, as if the final piece of a puzzle had clicked into place. "I now pronounce you wife and wife," the officiant declared, her voice ringing out across the gardens. "You may kiss the bride." As our lips met, sealing our union, a cheer went up from our gathered friends and family. I could see Andrea's parents in the front row, their faces shining with pride and acceptance. My own family, once skeptical, now wiped away tears of joy. The reception was a joyous celebration of love in all its forms. Same-sex couples danced alongside straight ones, young and old alike coming together to share in our happiness. As Andrea and I swayed to our first dance, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd come. "What are you thinking about?" Andrea murmured, her head resting on my shoulder. I smiled, pulling her closer. "Just how lucky I am, and how excited I am for our future together." As the night wore on, we snuck away from the party, finding a quiet moment in the gardens. The air was crisp with the promise of autumn, stars twinkling overhead like scattered diamonds. "So, Mrs. Collins Harris," I said, wrapping my arms around my wife, "are you ready for our next big adventure?" Andrea's eyes sparkled with mischief and love. "With you? Always." We shared a tender kiss, the world falling away until it was just the two of us, wrapped in the cocoon of our love. As we made our way back to the reception, hand in hand, I felt a sense of excitement for the future stretching out before us. The road hadn't always been easy, and I knew there would be challenges ahead. But with Andrea by my side, I was ready to face anything. We had fought for our love, stood up against hatred and prejudice, and come out stronger for it. As we rejoined our friends and family, surrounded by laughter and music, I knew that this was just the beginning. Our love story, captured through the lens of my camera and the strokes of Andrea's brush, would continue to inspire and touch hearts. And together, we would paint a future brighter and more beautiful than either of us could have imagined alone. The night ended with a spectacular fireworks display, lighting up the sky in a riot of color. As I held Andrea close, watching the sparks reflect in her eyes, I silently renewed my vows. To love her, to protect her, to stand by her side through whatever life might bring. This was our happily ever after, and it was more perfect than I could have ever dreamed.